Welcome to the story of my life that thrilled me and ended me at the same time.
Tom thought he had it all: a successful career, a loving wife, and a perfect life. But on that fateful night, a single kiss changed everything. As he stood there, watching his wife in the arms of another man, Tom realized that sometimes the greatest betrayals come from those we trust the most. This is the story of how a moment of weakness destroyed a 19-year marriage and the unexpected journey that followed. This is exactly what happened to Tom. His life seemed perfect: a loving wife, twin daughters, and now a promotion to CFO. But little did he know, his world was about to fall apart. As Tom was packing for an important business trip, he sensed something was wrong. The air in the house was thick with tension, and Abigail's silence spoke volumes. When she finally spoke, her words were sharp and cutting, filled with an anger that Tom couldn't quite understand. He tried to dismiss it as the stress of his new position and the upcoming trip. The wedding invitation lay on the counter, a silent reminder of what Tom would miss. Abigail's best friend was getting married, and she was the maid of honor. Tom knew how important it was to her, but he was sure she understood that her career was important too, wasn't it? As he zipped up his suitcase, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had made a mistake. I drove fast, the trees passing by my window, and I found myself gripping the steering wheel tighter than I should have. Something was wrong, but I couldn't understand what. Abigail's face came back to me, the pain in her eyes, the tense line of her mouth. I should have said more, done something different, but what should I do? There was a flurry of activity at the airport, but I felt strangely disconnected from it all. As I checked in for my flight, I couldn't stop thinking about Abigail, how she turned her back on me when I tried to kiss her goodbye. The sound of her slamming her bedroom door. I shook my head and tried to focus on the job at hand, everything I'd worked for, this promotion. I told myself Abigail would come around, she had to. But as I settled into my seat on the plane, a doubt crept into my mind. Was this promotion worth the strain on my marriage? I closed my eyes, remembering the early days of our relationship, how Abigail's eyes lit up when she smiled, how I felt her hand in mine. When did everything start to change? When did we start to drift apart? The flight seemed to last forever. When I checked into my hotel, tired and nervous, I opened my laptop, ready to go through my presentation one last time. Just then my phone rang. I picked it up, expecting to hear Abigail's voice, but instead it was my assistant. "Tom, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice full of disappointment. "The meeting has been canceled. There's been a mix-up with the dates." I sat heavily on the bed, my mind reeling. The meeting had been canceled. All this fighting with Abigail, missing the wedding for nothing. I ran a hand through my hair, suddenly feeling overwhelmed. What was I supposed to do now? That's when I had an idea. I could go home, I could surprise Abigail at the wedding, I could make things right. My heart started to race as I made a split-second decision. I quickly packed my bags and headed back to the airport. As I drove home from the airport, my mind was filled with images of Abigail's face when she saw me. Surprised joy. I imagined putting my arms around her, whispering how sorry I was for being so absorbed in work. We would dance at the reception, laugh with our friends, and everything would be right again. With my heart pounding with anticipation, I pulled up to the wedding venue, the sounds of music and laughter filling the parking lot. I straightened my tie and took a deep breath. That was it. I was going to fix everything. But as I entered the reception hall, the sight before me stopped me in my tracks. Abigail was there, her red hair glowing under the soft lights, but she wasn't alone. She was dancing with a man I recognized as her ex-husband Max, dressed up for her, wearing a miniskirt. Their bodies were close together, enjoying the music. And then, as if in slow motion in a movie, I watched Max lean over and kiss her. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. And before I realized what I was doing, I had my phone in my hand. With trembling fingers, I took a picture, then another. I watched Abigail kissing Max, her hands tangled in his hair. It couldn't happen. Not Abigail, not my wife, but the evidence was on my phone screen, undeniable and devastating. 3. A betrayal caught on camera. The world spun around me as I stared at my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. I had never imagined that a single photo could have such power. But what was I supposed to do with this devastating evidence? My heart raced as I lowered my hand, the image now seared into my memory. How could Abigail smile and laugh as she destroyed our 19-year marriage? And she looked happier than she was with me. I watched helplessly as Max's hand traveled up the curve of Abigail's spine. She leaned into his touch, a smile appearing on her lips that I had once believed was only for me. Time seemed to slow down as I witnessed the unthinkable. Their faces grew closer, their eyes locked in an intense gaze. How many times had Abigail kissed me like that? On our wedding day, as we exchanged our vows, Abigail's eyes shone with tears of joy. The birth of our twin daughters, tiny miracles that brought us closer than ever before. 19 years of love, trust, and shared dreams all shattered before my eyes in a single moment. I couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, too crowded. The other guests seemed to mock me, their indifference to my pain, a cruel reminder of how quickly life can change. I needed to escape, to get out of this nightmare and wake up in a world where Abigail was still mine. But I couldn't move. My feet seemed glued to the floor, my eyes unable to leave the couple on the dance floor. Max whispered something in Abigail's ear, and she threw her head back in laughter, revealing the long line of her throat. I wondered how long this had been going on. Had it started before the wedding? Was this kiss the culmination of weeks, months, even years of secret longing? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more painful than the last. As I watched in shock, a waiter bumped into me. I leaned against the wall of the building, taking deep breaths, trying to stabilize myself. What was I supposed to do now? How could I look him in the face knowing what I had seen? I took a deep breath, calming myself for what I was about to do. My thumbs hovered over the keys with a strange, disconnected feeling, as if they belonged to someone else. The message was short, but the impact would last a lifetime. I'm back. I've seen everything. We're done. When I pressed send, a strange mixture of relief and despair washed over me. It was all over. In just 7 words, I had ended almost 20 years of marriage. Was it cowardly to do it like that, in a text message? Maybe it was, but in that moment, it was the only thing I could do without completely falling apart. I watched Abigail with her phone in her hand. She looked at it, her brow furrowed in confusion. Then I saw the color drain from her face as she took in the meaning of my words, her eyes darting around the room, searching frantically until they locked onto mine on the crowded dance floor. I couldn't stand the sight of him any longer, so I turned around and headed for the exit. I silenced the phone and shoved it deep into my pocket. I couldn't deal with him right now. I couldn't deal with any of this. I got in my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. Where was I supposed to go now? Home. The thought of returning home, full of memories and shared dreams, was unbearable. To a hotel, it seemed so final, so divorced. As I sat there paralyzed with indecision, the reality of what I was doing began to dawn on me. I had ended my marriage with a text message. Was it the right thing to do? I honestly didn't know. All I knew was that in that moment, when I saw my wife in the arms of another man, it was the only thing I could do to protect what was left of my shattered heart. 5. The past comes back. Have you ever wondered if the ghosts of past relationships really do leave us? As we drove home, the weight of Abigail's past with Max hung in the air like a fog that refused to lift. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking away not only from the wedding, but also from a past I thought we had left behind. The road stretched out before me, a dark ribbon stretching into the night. Each mile marker felt like a year of our marriage, flashing in a blur of memories. I remembered the first time Abigail told me about Max, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and pain. She had come to me seeking solace, her eyes red from crying. "I will never hurt you like that." I promised her, my words a balm for her wounded heart. I meant it with every fiber of my being. I would be different. I would be her safe harbor, her rock in the storm of betrayal. Now, as I gripped the steering wheel, those words echoed in my mind with cruel irony. How quickly the tables had turned. The man who had sworn to protect her heart was now the one fleeing an unexpected blow. I couldn't help wondering if Abigail had really forgotten Max. Was there a part of her that always missed him, even as she built a life with me? The thought sent shivers down my spine. 19 years of marriage, and suddenly I felt like I didn't know her at all. My mind went back to the early days of our relationship. Abigail was cautious at first, her heart still wounded by Max's betrayal. I was patient and understanding, showing her that not all men are like her ex-husband. Slowly, like a flower opening its petals to the sun, she opened up to me, or so I thought. Now I was questioning everything. Was our entire marriage built on a foundation of unresolved feelings? Was I just a placeholder, a safe choice, while she maintained her commitment to Max? The streetlights cast eerie shadows on the dashboard as I turned onto our street. Our house loomed ahead, a structure that once represented our shared dreams and future. Now it felt like a monument to my naivety. I pulled into the driveway, the familiar crunch of gravel under the tires, a stark contrast to the unfamiliarity of the situation. When I stopped the engine, the silence was deafening. I sat there, my hands still on the steering wheel, unable to convince myself to go inside. The weight of the past was pressing down on me. I was drowning in its intensity. I closed my eyes, trying to make sense of it all. How had we gotten to this point? How had Abigail's past with Max come back to haunt us so relentlessly? As memories of Max's betrayal resurfaced, I thought of the countless times I had comforted Abigail over the years. Nightmares would wake her up, making her tremble in my arms. The way her face clouded when we met her at social events. I always thought it was a residual pain, the kind that never fully heals but fades with time. But what if it was something else entirely? What if those moments were not just echoes of past pain, but flashes of unresolved longing? The house in front of me blurred as my eyes filled with tears. I blinked them away, angry at myself for this show of weakness. I was supposed to be the strong one, the trusted husband who helped Abigail rebuild her life after Max's betrayal. Now I felt like a fool for believing I was different and special. I forced myself to get out of the car, feeling like I was walking through molasses with every step I took towards the front door. The key felt foreign in my hand as I unlocked the door and stepped into a house that no longer felt like mine. Standing in the darkened entryway, surrounded by the trappings of our shared life, I couldn't help but feel like an intruder. The family photos lining the walls captured moments of joy and love that now felt tarnished. I wondered if Abigail was thinking of Max in those moments of happiness. I made my way to our bedroom, afraid of what I might find. Could there be signs I had missed? clues to Abigail's continuing feelings for her ex-husband that I was too blind to see. The room was exactly as we had left it, nothing out of place, yet everything felt different. The bed we had shared for almost 20 years now seemed wide and cold. I sat on the edge, my head in my hands, overwhelmed by the tide of emotions that washed over me. 6. After a moment of weakness, have you ever felt the world crumble under your feet, knowing that it was all your fault? As I sat there drowning in a sea of betrayal, I never imagined that Abigail was facing her own tsunami of regret. What if a single thoughtless moment could wipe away 20 years of love and trust? The soft glow of Abigail's phone illuminated her face in the dim reception hall. Her hands trembled as she read Tom's message, each word a dagger to her heart. "I'm back. I saw everything. We're done." 7 words. That was all it took for her world to collapse. She stumbled out of the wedding reception, her best friend's worried voice fading into the background. The cool night air was not enough to distract her as she fumbled with her car keys. How could she have been so stupid, so careless? The drive home was blurred by streetlights and tears. Abigail's mind replayed the moment with Max over and over again. It was just a dance, wasn't it? Just a moment of nostalgia, of remembering what once was. But then Max's lips were on hers, and for a moment she didn't pull back. That 1 second had cost him everything. As he pulled into the driveway, his heart skipped a beat when he saw Tom's car. Maybe there was still a chance to explain, to ask for forgiveness. She ran to the front door, her hands shaking so badly she could barely put the key in the lock. "Tom," his voice echoed through the dark and silent house. There was no answer. Moving from room to room, she turned on the lights and called Tom's name. But Tom was nowhere to be found. Abigail collapsed on her bed, the weight of what she had done crushing her. She dialed Tom's number, praying he would pick up. It went straight to voicemail. She sent message after message, each one more desperate than the last. "Please, Tom, let me explain. It didn't mean anything. I love you." But minutes passed and her phone went silent. As the first rays of dawn filtered through the window, Abigail made a decision that would change everything. With trembling hands, she took off her wedding ring. It was a symbol of their love, their commitment, and their life together. She gently placed it on Tom's pillow, a lump forming in her throat as she imagined him finding it there. She left a note next to the ring. 5 words she felt were woefully inadequate. "I'm sorry. I'll be at Max's house." She knew what it would look like to run to her ex-husband after what she had done. But she had nowhere else to go, and part of her hoped that Tom would come and look for her there and ask for an explanation. As Abigail packed a small bag, her eyes fell on the family photos lining their dresser. Tom's smiling face, their beautiful daughter. How would she explain this to Taylor and Sloan? The thought of hurting his children made him physically ill. He stood at the front door and took one last look at the house they had built together. The kitchen where they shared countless meals and laughter. The living room where they cuddled on the couch and watched movies late into the night. There was a memory in every corner, and now each one felt like it had been stained. The drive to Max's apartment was surreal. How many times had she comforted Tom, reassured him that his past with Max was just that, past. And now here she was, seeking refuge with the man who had once broken her heart. Max opened the door, his face a mixture of surprise and concern. "Abigail, what's wrong?" She didn't dare say the words. Instead, she collapsed in Max's arms, sobs racking her body. Max led her inside, his touch hesitant, unsure. As Abigail sat in Max's armchair, holding the cup of tea she couldn't bring herself to drink, the full weight of what she had done began to fall on her. She had thrown away 19 years of marriage for a moment of weakness. She had betrayed not only Tom, but her daughters, her friends, and herself. The days ahead would be filled with tears and regret. Abigail would face the devastating consequences of her actions. The pain in her daughter's eyes, the judgment of her friends and family, the loss of the life she had built with Tom. She would learn the hard way that sometimes there is no going back from a mistake. Trust once broken is almost impossible to repair. My cursor hovered over my Facebook profile, and the profile Married to Abigail appeared there. 19 years of love, trust, and shared dreams reduced to a simple drop-down menu. Single, divorced, a mixed bag. With trembling hands I went to my photos, and there they were, evidence of my shattered world. Abigail and Max, caught in their intimate dance, their betrayal frozen in time. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the upload button. Was I really going to do this, expose our private pain to the world? I thought of Abigail's face when she saw my message. Shock, guilt, horror. Part of me wanted her to feel the same shame, for everyone to see what she had done. But another part of me hesitated. What about our girls, our friends, our families? Did they deserve to find out this way? In the end, my pain won out. With a click, the photos went live. Abigail and Max, their kiss now publicly visible to all our friends and family. I felt a rush of adrenaline, a sense of vindication. Let them see it. Let them judge. When the notifications started coming in, I felt vulnerable. Yet there was also a strange sense of empowerment. I was in control of the narrative, no more silent whispers, no more pitying looks. I had laid it all out there, good and bad. The comments started coming in. Shock, disbelief, anger on my behalf. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years reached out to me, offering support and condemnation in equal measure. I watched our shared social circle grapple with the news, taking sides, asking questions. Deep in thought, I decided to call my daughters. You can't imagine the aftermath. Hey, Dad, what's up? Taylor's voice was bright and carefree. I could almost see her smile through the phone. Hi, girls. I managed, speaking very insecurely. I need to talk to you both about something important. There was a pause, a moment of hesitation. I think they sensed something was wrong. Then came Sloane's voice, quieter and more cautious. Dad, is everything okay? I took a deep breath, trying to stabilize myself. How do you even begin to explain something like this? I tried to find words, each one sounding inadequate and empty. Your mom and we're going through some changes. We're separating. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear their breathing, the slight lump in Sloane's throat, Taylor's sharp intake of air. I waited, giving them time to think, wishing I could reach over the phone and hold them. Taylor's voice rose, angry and accusing. What do you mean break up? What happened? Did you do something? Did Mom do it? Sloane, on the contrary, was silent. I could hear her soft sobs in the background, and it broke my heart. I tried to explain, to give them context without overwhelming them with all the painful details. But how do you explain betrayal to your children without forever tainting their view of love? As the days passed, I watched my daughters struggle to process the news. Taylor threw herself into her studies with fierce intensity, as if she could bury her pain under a stack of textbooks. Sloane withdrew into herself, her normally bubbly personality darkened with sadness. Family dinners became a thing of the past, replaced by awkward video calls. One night, during one of our calls, Taylor exploded. I hate this. I hate that you and Mom can't work things out. I hate that our family is falling apart. Her words hit me like physical blows, each one a reminder of my failure as a parent. Why can't things be the way they used to be? Sloane cried out in a rare moment of vocal expression. Her plea reflected my own unspoken wish, my desperate desire to turn back the clock and undo the damage. I found myself struggling to balance my pain with theirs. How could I be there for them when I could barely hold myself together? I tried to be strong, to be the rock they needed, but some days I felt like I was drowning in a sea of guilt and regret. As the weeks turned into months, I saw subtle changes in my daughters. Taylor's anger slowly gave way to fragile acceptance. The silence of the night was deafening, and I would stay awake for hours, my mind replaying every moment of our marriage, looking for signs I might have missed. My friends, who I thought would be there for me through everything, began to distance themselves from me. Some chose sides and sided with Abigail or me, while others disappeared, uncomfortable with the complexity of our situation. The isolation was suffocating. I had never felt so alone, even in a crowded room. Work became my refuge. I dedicated myself to long hours at the office, using the endless stream of meetings and reports to avoid the emptiness that awaited me at home. My colleagues noticed the change, but few dared to comment. I reconnected with old hobbies, lost myself in books for hours on end, or tinkered with my long, neglected guitar. Slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild my life. It was not the life I had planned or expected, but it was my life now. And as I pieced together this new version of myself, I realized that even though my marriage was over, my story was far from over. When I cautiously stepped back into the dating world a few months later, I never expected to find a connection that would make me question everything I thought I knew about love. But fate had other plans, and her name was Julia. I remember the day we met like it was yesterday. The business conference was supposed to be an ordinary event, suits and PowerPoint presentations. But then I heard a laugh that cut through the monotony like a ray of sunshine. I turned to look for its source, and there it was. Julia, the corners of her eyes crinkled as she smiled, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. I found myself drawn to her like a moth to a flame. We started talking, and suddenly the rest of the conference was forgotten. Julia was intelligent, witty, and had a warmth that put me at ease. As we chatted, I felt something stirring inside me, a spark that I thought had long since died. But with that spark came fear. How could I trust again after everything that had happened? The weight of my past hung on my shoulders, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had somehow betrayed my daughters, even by thinking about the possibility of moving on. Julia sensed my hesitation. "I've been there," she said softly, her eyes meeting mine. "Divorce is not just the end of a marriage. It's the death of a future you thought you would have." His words hit me like a punch in the gut. How could he understand so perfectly? As it turned out, Julia had her own story of heartbreak and renewal. She too had gone through a divorce, and her journey mirrored mine in many ways. We bonded through shared experiences, the pain of betrayal, the struggle of co-parenting, the fear of opening our hearts again. Our relationship grew slowly, like a delicate flower pushing through cracks in concrete. We took our time, savoring every moment, every discovery. Julia never forced me to be anything other than what I was. She listened when I needed to talk, gave me space when I needed to breathe, and held my hand when the darkness threatened to suffocate me. At every appointment, at every midnight phone call, I felt my heart heal. Julia became my confidante, my go-to person when the weight of my past threatened to crush me. I found myself sharing my deeply buried fears, worries that I had failed as a husband, as a father, as a man. "You are not a failure," Julia would say, her voice firm but gentle. "You are human. We all make mistakes. It's how we learn from them that matters." As the months passed, I realized something profound. Julia wasn't trying to replace what I had lost. She was helping me build something new, something beautiful in its own right. Our relationship wasn't about forgetting the past, it was about learning from it, growing from it, and creating a future that honored everything we had been through. The day I introduced Julia to Taylor and Sloan was one of the most nerve-wracking days of my life. My palms were sweaty, my heart racing as I watched my daughters evaluate this woman who had become so important to me. But Julia won them over with her infinite patience and warmth. She didn't try to be their mother or their best friend. She was just being herself, kind, funny, and genuinely interested in getting to know them. Watching Julia with my daughters, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This was right. This was the way it was supposed to be. For the first time in years, I could see a future stretching out before me, a future filled with love, laughter, and the promise of new beginnings. Julia became more than my girlfriend. She became my partner, my rock, my lighthouse in the storm. And when I finally got down on one knee and asked her to be my wife, it wasn't because I was trying to replace what I had lost. It was because I had found something new, something precious, something worth fighting for. As I slipped the ring on Julia's finger, I felt a familiar anxiety, the ghosts of my past whispering doubts in my ear. Would I really be able to embrace this new love, or would old wounds reopen and poison everything? Julia's eyes sparkled with joy, but a part of me was trapped in the shadow of betrayal. I thought I had moved on, but the truth was that Abigail's kiss with Max had left a deeper scar than I realized. Trust is a choice. My doctor reminded me afterward, it's also a risk, but without it, you can never truly experience love. Julia, thank God, stood by me through everything, but I could see the damage my insecurity was doing to her. Every time I questioned where she was, or walked away from her after a night out, the light in her eyes dimmed a little more. I was pushing away what I was so afraid of losing. One night, after a particularly tense discussion about weekend plans, Julia sat me down. "Tom," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I love you, but I can't keep proving myself to you. I'm not Abigail, and you are not the man you were then." Her words hit me like a punch in the gut. I realized I had a choice to make. I could let my fear of being hurt again keep me from this beautiful, patient woman who loved me. Or I could choose to believe in us, to trust that not everyone was waiting to betray me. It wasn't easy. There were still moments when I doubted, when my old fears threatened to take over. But I learned to recognize these thoughts for what they were: echoes of past hurts, not reflections of my present reality. I started small. When Julia went out with her friends, I resisted the urge to text her constantly. Instead, I focused on my own hobbies, rediscovering the joy of losing myself in a good book or strumming my guitar. I deleted the tracking app I had secretly installed on her phone, ashamed that I had ever thought of using it. Slowly, I felt the weight lifting off my shoulders. I began to see Julia for who she really was: not a potential threat, but a partner who chose to build a life with me, scars and all. Her laughter became a balm for my soul, not a trigger of doubt. On the day I proposed, standing on the hill where I had once promised Abigail forever, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. When Julia's eyes filled with tears of joy, I realized that trust wasn't just about believing in her fidelity. It was about believing in myself, that I could love and be loved again. Whatever you do, don't do such nonsense. I love you. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your thoughts about Tom in the comments.